When I was first learning how to code, I made a lot of mistakes, and sometimes I made the same mistake over and over and over again. And the hard thing about programming is that the computer will do exactly what you tell it to do. It's not like a human that can take what you tell it to do and then kind of understand what you're trying to do and then do that for you. It will just do exactly what you tell it to do. And it's not like a human. And maybe AI will change that. Maybe we will have a programming language where the compiler will be able to understand what you're trying to code and then code it properly for you. But until then, we're coding with programming languages where the compiler will only do what you tell it to do. So we have to be very careful with how we program. So in this video, I'm going to go over common beginner mistakes that I've done myself in the past, and also mistakes that I've seen a lot of my other students make. And hopefully from this video, you can learn a lot from it and not make the same mistakes as they did. So my name's Henrik, and I'm here to help you learn the foundations of software development. So let's get started. But before we begin, I'd like to mention that I do have a free workshop for you. It's called my Capstone Project Workshop. And in that workshop, I go over 3 secrets to coding your own Capstone project in just 3 months. Now, why did I create this workshop? The most common goal that I get from people who apply to my one-on-one programming mentorship program is to, quote, be more proficient at creating projects. You and I both know that learning how to code is more than just memorizing code syntax. It's about applying your coding skills to real-world projects that make you feel confident and capable. So if this sounds like you, you can download this workshop in the link in the description. And if you download it and watch it and pay attention to what it says, then you'll definitely build a good foundation to your software development journey. Alright, so we have a program here called foodcategorizer.c, and basically what it does is it asks the user for their name and then their favorite food, and then it's going to try to categorize what kind of food it is, if it's Italian food or Chinese food. And so we have a list of foods here, a list of Italian foods and Chinese foods. And please don't get mad at me that I have these generic or stereotypical food items for these different cuisines. So please forgive me if you're Italian or Chinese, but we're just going to go with this for now. And so basically what it does, this program does, it tries to see what this favorite food that the user inputted, what kind of cuisine is it? Is it Italian or is it Chinese? And so it sets a flag if it's Italian and sets it to 1. If it's Chinese, it sets it to 1. And these are programming flags. And then it's going to say hello and then their name. And then it's going to say your favorite food is an Italian dish if that flag is set. Or it's going to say it's a Chinese dish, or if that flag is set. And then if it's neither, it's going to say I don't know which cuisine that belongs to. So we have this program here, and I'm just going to run it so you can get an idea of how it works. So Henrik, favorite food, I'm going to say pizza, because pizza is probably my favorite food. And then there you go. It says your favorite food pizza is an Italian dish. So it looks like it's working, right? But there's a ton of bugs in here, and these are common beginner mistakes. So let's go ahead and start looking at the common beginner mistakes here. I'm going to try seeing if we can get dumplings to categorize correctly under the Chinese foods. So let's do this one. Okay, so there you go. There's a bug right there. It says dumplings is an Italian dish. So the first mistake I would like to highlight is that we have food equals Italian foods. And so we're iterating through this list here of Italian foods, and you can't do this with strings. So food is another string, so it's a char array of 10 elements, 10 chars, and you can't just do food is equal to Italian foods. You have to use the string compare function. So we have to use the string compare function to compare these two strings. If food and the first element in Italian foods, or some element in Italian foods, is also the same string as food, then it's going to equal 0, and then we can go into this if block here and set the flag for is Italian. And the same is true, we need to adjust this one as well. Okay, so there you go. So that's one of the first beginner mistakes, but you have to use the function string compare. And in order to use the string compare function, we need to add the string.h library. So let's go to the top here. Okay, Henrik, and let's do dumplings again. Let's see if it works this time. Okay, so now it says segmentation fault. So that means there's still a bug here. So let's go here and try to figure out what's going on. All right, so let's run this in the debugger. So I'm gonna run this debugger and I'm gonna stop right here. And let's just keep running the code until we see an error happen. So let's run through the code. Okay, now let's enter my name. Okay, now my favorite food, we're gonna do dumplings again because that's when we saw the error happening. All right, so we're gonna go in here. Now let's see here. So we have I is equal to some weird number. It's not initialized yet. It's gonna be initialized to 0. Okay, now it's 0. Okay, so now we're going into this for loop. Okay, we skipped because the condition was not met. And then I is 1 now. And then we skip. Then I is 2 now. Skip. I is 3. I is 4 now. And then I is going to be 5. And then after this, error. Okay, so we saw the error happen when I was equal to 5. So the reason why error is happening is because we're using I equal to 5 in Italian foods, and Italian foods only has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements. And so it actually only goes from the index 0 to the index 4. And so this is another common beginner mistake. So this is a second beginner mistake, is that sometimes beginners will put less than or equals to when iterating through an array. And the Italian count is 5, so it's going to include that 5 number. We don't want to include the 5 number. We want to go only from the indices 0 to 4. So this is common beginner mistake number 2, and we need to do this over here as well. Okay, so now let's run this one and see what happens. Okay, Henrik, dumplings. Okay, so now we don't have that segmentation fault error anymore, but now it's thinking that dumplings is still an Italian dish. Okay, we can use the debugger again. Then favorite food, dumplings. Okay, you see food is dumplings. Let's see if the program actually goes into this if statement and sets it is Italian to 1. And right now is Italian is set to this weird number. Okay, now let's jump down to here. Okay, is Italian is still set to that weird number. And then it says is Italian equals 1. And then we go here. Okay, so you see how is Italian became 1. So this is common beginner mistake number 3. So when they are doing an if check on this number, instead of doing equals, they did just equals. So they said is Italian equal to 1? They're thinking that this if condition is actually checking if this variable is equal to 1, but what it's actually doing is it's setting it equal to 1. So we have to do equals. Okay, Henrik, dumplings. Okay, there you go. So now dumplings is actually categorized correctly as a Chinese dish. Okay, common beginner mistake number 4 is actually we actually saw it already earlier. You can see here that is Chinese is already equal to 1, and we haven't even categorized it yet. So let's say we do a food. I'm talking about this flag here. This flag is already set to equal to 1, and we haven't even gotten to this line of code yet. So assuming that we put in some random food that doesn't belong in either of these foods categories, in any of these categories, or sorry, in any of these lists, then we might see this printf come up. So let's redo this one. Bananas. Okay. So you see here is Chinese is equal to 1 already. So if we go all the way down here, is Chinese might still equal 1, but we haven't even set it to 1. So we come down here, is Chinese is still equal to 1. So we're going to end up coming into this printf statement here. And then it's going to say your food, bananas, is a Chinese dish. And that's actually not the case. So this is beginner mistake number 4 now. So the fourth one is uninitialized variables. So because they're uninitialized, they could equal 1 at any moment. So we have to initialize them to 0. Okay, now let's do bananas again. Okay, now it says I don't know which cuisine bananas belongs to. Okay, now let's try seeing if we can get sweet and sour pork to be categorized correctly. So let's try this one. Sweet and sour pork. Okay, so there's another bug. So it says, I don't know which cuisine sweet belongs to. So this is common beginner mistake number 5 that I'm going to go over. Of course, beginners make a lot of mistakes, but see here, we're using scanf, and scanf, it doesn't scan in, it will stop after it sees a white line. So if we want to see this whole sweet and sour pork, we need to use, probably a better function to use is fgetS. So we were using scanf, but scanf is not good for reading in phrases. It can only read up to the white line. So we tried to use fgetS, but the common beginner mistake is fgetS is actually picking up the end of line character from over here. So when a user inputs their name, like I put in Henrik and I pressed enter, the enter character is actually being stored at the beginning of fgetS. We can actually run this in the debugger to show you. So I typed in Henrik here, and then we were trying to enter the favorite food, but it looks like food is now, it has the end of line character here. So it took the end of line character from when I pressed enter for Henrik. So what we need to do is we need to consume the end of line character. One quick and easy way to do this is with getChar. Okay, let's do this again. Henrik. Okay, now it's not bypassing, now it's letting me put in my favorite food again. So now let's do sweet and sour pork, right? Okay, so sweet and belongs to. So it didn't get the whole phrase here. So the reason why I didn't get that is because food is only up to 10 characters. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's only going to read in these 10 characters here. So we need to expand, we need to make sure food has enough characters to store. Okay, so I'm going to put 19 for now because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So beginner mistake number 6, is it 6 or 7? They would think, oh, I counted 19 characters here, so I'm going to put 19 here. But you'll see a problem when we do this. Okay, so there's the other problem. It does sweet and sour pour, but there's no K there. And that's because with fgetS, when it's reading, it has to take into account the end of string character. So it's only going to read up to the first 18, which is this one, and then it's going to put the end of string character here right after. So what's actually being stored, we can actually look at it in the debugger. So what's actually being stored, if you look at the food array, or the food char, so sweet and sour, pour, but it has to have this end of string character here. So this end of string character is going to be stored there instead of the K, because you need to finish your string with that extra character. So we need to make this 20. Okay, there you go. So now it says your favorite food, sweet and sour pork, is a Chinese dish. Okay, I think there's another bug here. Let's do, say I want to put in my name and then my last initial, Henrik M. And then it says, oh, I don't know which cuisine M belongs to. So that's because it consumed the space, and then M and enter was stored in the food array. So if we want to put Henrik M, we need to use fgetS also for that. Okay, so for some reason when I entered Henrik M, there was there was a space here, and it looks like the program was probably asking me to give them another char here. This is probably what this is doing. So this getChar is no longer working with this fgetS. This getChar was working for the scanf implementation. So let's get rid of this one here. And then something else happened with the food. So when I entered pizza and the end of line character, pizza and the end of line character was stored in the food. So let's use the debugger, and then this will make it more clear what's going on. Okay, so you can see here that there's Henrik, but then there's an end-of-line character that's stored in the name. Same thing happened with pizza. So we need to make sure that those are not end-of-line characters. We want to make them end-of-string characters like this one here. So one thing we can do is we can just replace that end-of-line character with the end-of-string character. Okay, so we're gonna find the end-of-line character, and then we're gonna replace it with the end-of-string character. Okay, so let's try this. Okay, Henrik, then pizza. Okay, there you go. Now it's working again. All right, so now how to avoid these common beginner mistakes if you're a beginner. So my first suggestion to you would be to code your code or to code your features incrementally. So for example, with the scanf, when you're scanning in the name and the favorite food, so there was a lot of bugs that were happening here, but luckily with the scanf, it was working for when we would only do one-word answers, like if we just did pizza and Henrik or dumplings and Henrik. So you need to make sure you exercise this correctly. So what I would do if you're a beginner, just do like some printf here instead of going and trying to do this code already. Just make sure you're actually have this line of code there first, like your favorite food is, and then hello. So just have this printf to verify that name is stored correctly and verify that the food is stored correctly. So do those changes first. Make sure that this is all working with dumplings, all of these options here. Make sure all of these options work first, because when you're using scanf, you'll realize that there's a lot of nuances, a lot of quirks with scanf, and there's also a lot of quirks with fgetS. So with scanf, one quirk is that if you don't specify how many characters that you want to scan in, the scanf you can actually put in a really long name that doesn't fit inside this name string, and then that can cause you to have an overflow. So that's one quirk with scanf. Another quirk with scanf is that it leaves that new line character. So when you pressed enter, when I put in my name Henrik and I pressed enter, this fgetS picked up that enter. So we had to put get char. So that's another quirk that we learned. And then there's that other idea of how scanf, it stops reading when it sees a new line character. So when we typed in this one here, sweet and sour pork, it only read in the sweet. It didn't read sweet and sour pork. So there are some quirks with scanf. There's also quirks with fgetS. Like we had to make sure with fgetS, it was reading in the end of line character. We have to replace it with the end of string character instead. So this is why you should build your code incrementally and make sure you test things out first. Test different cases and make sure you're handling any edge cases or corner cases. And that's how you make sure you don't make these mistakes, and then it'll be a headache trying to figure out what happened in your program. Another tip for beginners is, so I've been compiling it here with the warnings off. So if you remove the warning, if you make sure you enable the warnings, the compiler will actually tell you all the things that are wrong with the code. So now if you try to compile this, you're going to see a lot of warnings. And so it will actually help you with these problems. You'll say here, this is resulting in with an assignment. So it's saying you're assigning one to is Italian. You need to put equals equals. Use equals equals to turn this assignment into an equality comparison. Another way to avoid making mistakes is to practice. And so the more you practice, the more mistakes you make. The more mistakes you make, the more you learn. And then when you code in the future, you're not going to make the same mistakes that you made in the past. So keep practicing, build new kinds of programs, add more complexity to your program. So you try different things, try new things. And then that's how you can avoid these mistakes in the future. Another tip for you is to study other people's programs. When you study other people's programs, you can get an idea of how they're coding things. And then when you see how they're coding things, you can be inquisitive and ask questions like, why did they code it this way? Something that I do subconsciously is I do a check through my code to make sure I didn't miss anything. So I do check for uninitialized variables. I check for my conditions, make sure my conditions are right. And this comes through experience. You have a mental list of things to watch out for, good practices and bad practices. And then so you look at your code, you look at someone else's code, you have that mental list in your mind. You can actually create your own physical list or your own digital list, and then have a list of things to watch out for, and make sure you check that list when you check your code or check someone else's code when you're doing a review. And the last tip for you is, of course, you can watch videos like my videos where I teach you all these things, teach you how to build a good foundation for software development. So be sure to watch my videos so that you don't make mistakes in the future. Like I mentioned earlier, I have a free workshop for you, my Capstone project workshop. And in that workshop, I go over 3 secrets to coding your own Capstone project in just 3 months. So if you want to become more proficient at creating your own projects, you want to move on from these tutorials and create your own projects, then be sure to check the link in the description and watch my coding workshop today. Alright, that's it for this week's video. I hope it really helped you out, and I hope to help you see some common beginner mistakes so you don't make these same mistakes in the future. And if it did help you out, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And if you have any other questions, feel free to let me know in the comments section, and I'll be sure to answer you there. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.